Well, good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, members. Senate Bill 1449 builds upon the important work that you, Madam Chair, worked on several years ago, the prompt testing of rape kits. The core of SB 1449 is very straightforward, but it will have a tremendous impact on the lives of victims and help put rapists behind bars. This measure simply changes one word in existing law by saying that law enforcement agencies and forensic laboratories shall follow, instead of should follow, as it currently states, listed timeframes for submitting and analyzing rape kit evidence. Members, many of you know that just 2 years ago, Governor Brown signed my SB 813, which eliminated the statute of limitations on rape. Though that was certainly a huge victory, the road to justice for victims of rape and sexual assault will be incomplete if their rape kits are never tested. All rape victims deserve to have their rape kits tested within a specified time frame, which can in turn help to ensure justice for victims, identify serial perpetrators, and even exonerate wrongfully convicted. Rape is one of the most traumatizing experiences of a person's life, so it is critical that rape kits are processed swiftly, both to attain justice and to help identify and prosecute rapists so that we can keep them off the streets. I would like to thank Alameda County District Attorney Nancy O'Malley, the Joyful Heart Foundation, and Natasha's Justice Project for all sponsoring this important legislation and for continuing to shed a bright light on this important issue and for fighting for justice for rape victims in California and across the country. Here to testify in support is DA O'Malley and Sarah Hackey-Bird, Managing Director of the Joyful Heart Foundation.
Thank you. Witnesses in support, go ahead.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. I am here as a sponsor and in support, in strong support of this bill. As Senator Skinner recalls that it was in 2014 that the senator carried the legislation and we sponsored testing all rape kits. And at that time, we were only able to have it become permissive and not mandatory. What we know since that time, and in my own county, we had 1,900 untested kits, which are now have all been tested, and we have no backlog. But what we did realize was the importance and the significance of DNA evidence, of linking unknown perpetrators to sexual assault committed by someone that they knew. We have a very tragic situation in Berkeley that's been in the news where there was a sexual assault, the kit was not tested, second sexual assault, and in between the two, there was a tragic murder of a Cal graduate student who was also sexually assaulted, all linked to the same person. But it was only because we created the process through my office and through the bill to make sure that all kits are tested. The technology now is so refined that it's mostly all robotics, and that makes it very efficient to test these kits and get very accurate results. And if there's a DNA profile, it goes into the database. What we've discovered both in California and across the country in our efforts to test all kits is that about 40% do have a DNA profile that go into a database. And we are solving sexual assault and sexual assault murder cases and other crimes at an incredible rate. And so, you know, I do believe that this is an important bill for justice. I believe it's an important bill for those victim survivors who actually go through the exam and do what they're supposed to do in order to apprehend perpetrators or identify perpetrators, and at the same time to be able to identify at an early stage someone who maybe has misidentified or wrongly accused of the sexual assault crime through exoneration, through DNA. And I urge an aye vote.
Next witness.
Madam Chair and members, thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here today to talk about this important legislation. My name is Sarah Hackey-Bird, and I'm Managing Director of the Joyful Heart Foundation. We strongly support Senate Bill 1449, which would require the testing of all rape kits connected to a reported crime in the state of California. Since 2010, Joyful Heart has worked tirelessly to eliminate the backlog of hundreds of thousands of untested rape kits across the country. Through partnerships with federal, state, local law enforcement, nonprofit organizations, advocates, and survivors, we are working to bring attention, critical funding, and reforms to improve the criminal justice response to sexual violence. To that end, 1 year ago, we launched an ambitious national campaign to expand access to justice for survivors by passing comprehensive rape kit reform legislation in all 50 states. It is our sincere hope that California will take a leadership role on this issue nationally by passing this important legislation. Every 98 seconds, someone is sexually assaulted in the United States. In the immediate aftermath of a sexual assault, a victim may choose to undergo a 4 to 6 hour invasive medical forensic examination to collect evidence left behind by the offender during the assault. Survivors who take this important step expect that their kits will be tested, and the public expects the same. Current law in California says law enforcement should send kits to testing. This is a well-intentioned law, but it is not working. In 2017, through Joyful Heart's Accountability Project, conducted in partnership with pro bono law firm Goodwin Procter, we issued open record requests to 8 jurisdictions across the state and found that 6 out of 8, or 75% of those jurisdictions, either are not following the encouragement of the law or have no way of knowing how many kits are actually in their possession. And yet we know that DNA is a valuable tool in terms of solving crime for law enforcement. Testing in Detroit of 10,000 kits uncovered over 800 potential serial rapists who have committed crimes in over 40 states and Washington, D.C. In Cleveland, testing of their 4,500 kits yielded more than 435 serial rapists. These results underscore what we know about sex offenders, that they rape again and again, they commit all kinds of crimes, and they often move from state to state and community to community. By passing SB 1449 and changing the should to shall, California will take dangerous, violent offenders off the street. It will demonstrate a commitment to survivors to help them find a path to healing. Right now in California, whether or not a rape kit gets tested depends on the zip code in which the survivor lives. This is not acceptable practice. We can and we must do better to bring dignity back into the process for victims across the state. I thank you very much for your attention to this issue. I thank you, Senator Leyva, for your leadership on this issue, and to appropriate $2 million to help law enforcement agencies comply with the proposed amendments is an important feature of this bill. We must come together to solve this problem and look forward to working closely with you all to pass this legislation. Thank you.
Other witnesses in support?
Madam Chair, Ryan Sherman with the Riverside Sheriff Association. We don't have the DNA backlog on the rape kits currently in Riverside County, but the other counties that do, they could help us close a lot of cases if they were expedited. So we're in support of the bill. Thank you.
Good morning, Kira Ross on behalf of the City of Sacramento in support of the bill.
Good morning, Gail Stewart with San Diego County District Attorney's Office in support of the bill.
Good morning, Sean Hoffman with the California District Attorneys Association in support.
Do we have any witnesses in opposition? All right, seeing none. Senator Stone, before I call on you, I want to make a comment. I think that all of us appreciate that words matter, and I think in recent times we've been even more aware that words really matter. And it has always struck me when I carried this a similar bill a few years ago, and I would stand before folks and describe, and I would use this term rape kit. And I thought about how do we use that term? Sewing kit, makeup kit. Do we refer to murder evidence as a murder kit? No. So I wonder sometimes whether the very terminology affects then how we treat this evidence. This is evidence. And as was described by the witness, it is evidence that is extracted in effect from an extensive and invasive medical examination. So I'm no longer going to use that term, and I'm going to put it in the proper categorization of evidence from a serious crime that all of us want to ensure is resolved. And unless we fully deal with that evidence and get the material from that evidence into our crime database, we have less likelihood of getting it fully resolved, as the data and the media reports show us again and again and again. So I just wanted to make that comment that I will no longer be referring to what has been described here multiple times. Senator Stone.
Madam Chair and Senator Leyva, thank you for bringing this forward. This is one area where you and I strongly agree. I appreciate your championing laws that go after perpetrators of sexual crimes against women and men in the state of California. And I also appreciate District Attorney O'Malley. I've seen you before this committee a number of times, and I greatly appreciate you spending your valuable time to be here today to advocate on such important issues. You talked about the robotics a little bit. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because that's new to me. And has it decreased the cost of examining these kits? Because as you know, we have about a 9,000 kit backlog in the state of California, and I applaud your county and Riverside County, of course, for eliminating this backlog, because I know it's been a tremendous tool for you to solve some cold cases and holding people ultimately accountable for some of these heinous crimes. So has it reduced cost?
Well, the initial investment is substantial for the crime labs, though most of the counties use the Department of Justice as their crime lab. And the Department of Justice has several pieces of technology and equipment that once the evidence is extracted from the evidence, then it can just go through the robotic process. So it takes a technician and not a criminalist who's going from step to step to step. Now, of course, it takes the oversight. There's no question about that. But once the investment is made in the technology, that it has not only streamlined the ability to test these kits and to, if there's any evidence, to be able to identify a profile and get it into the database. And there is also the use of private labs that work in conjunction with the government labs. So I would say our Department of Justice has really made a big investment in this area. And I would also say that crime labs that are busy, such as Riverside and Los Angeles, City of Los Angeles, Oakland, Contra Costa County, those crime labs have made the investment, and they are expediting the ability to test the evidence in a very rapid time. And so they are able to comply with what this law proposes in a meaningful way, and it has not impacted them once the robotics get in place.
And then if I can ask, what is your projection in the number of kits that you think that you're going to be utilizing in your county in 2018 based on 2017 numbers?
We look at about 350 to 400 exams a year.
Okay. And based on probably about an average cost of about $500 a kit, there's $2 million allocated. It's 4,000 kits for the entire state. Do you both feel that that is an appropriate number to cover the cost of all the kits that the state of California is going to need to make sure that we can test all new ones and not create more of a backlog that we have?
I think that it's a
Senator
good
Leyva, go
start.
ahead.
I think it's a good start, and as DA O'Malley and I were discussing this morning, there actually are grants that police agencies can apply for from the federal government, so we can find the money.
I'm happy to support your bill, and if I can, I'd be delighted and honored to be a co-author.
We'd be happy to add you. Thank you, Senator Stone.
Senator Mitchell, then Senator Jackson.
Thank you very much. At the appropriate time, I'd like to move the bill, Madam Chair, because I certainly support shall versus should. My question, I just wanted to elevate the question that's reflected on the final page of the analysis that questions whether or not it's more appropriate that the distributing entity be the Department of Justice versus Office of Emergency Services or BSCC. My assumption was because Department of Justice already manages the entire process, it made sense. And I'm assuming that just because those two other entities do manage grant programs, that was the inference. I don't know if there's any concern, but I certainly understand the rationale around Department of Justice and certainly wouldn't put BSCC on the list to administer anything additional. So I don't know if there was any deeper concern or that I wasn't getting.
I think that's why we didn't recommend an amendment yet, because it does go to Department of Justice, but I think we were raising, since ultimately the allocation would probably be done through the budget, that at least there would be able to have people that analyze this from that point of view be able to figure out what the appropriate place is if The Department of Justice is not.
Got it. All right. And again, I'll move the bill.
Okay, great. Senator Jackson.
Thank you. I think Senator Mitchell asked the questions I wanted to, but I want to thank the senator for doing this and ask to be added as a co-author. This is long overdue, and the statistics of how effective these tests can be at finding these serial rapists, it's just inexcusable we haven't done it sooner. So thank you, and if I may be added as a co-author.
We'd be happy to have you, Senator Jackson. Thank you.
All right, we will, Senator Leyva, if you would add me also as a co-author to this bill that will ensure that we test the evidence from sexual assaults.
Yes.
And with that, we will take a roll call.
Motion is due pass to appropriations. Skinner?
Aye.
Skinner, aye. Bradford? Jackson? Jackson, aye. Mitchell? Mitchell, aye. Stone? Stone, aye. Weiner? Weiner, aye.
We'll hold the roll open for our missing member, and we will now go to, and thanks very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members.